Hello, everybody. Jeff Duncan, Katherine Terrell, live from Saints headquarters out in suburban Metairie, where the 2016 NFL Draft has just been completed with the rounds. The later rounds just finished probably about an hour ago. We had a chance to talk to General Manager Mickey Loomis and get a draft overview. And I think it's fair to say he seemed, like probably every general manager in the league right now, very happy with the picks they got. Probably wish he had a few more picks and a little unfinished business maybe from the New Orleans Saints. What's your take so far on the overall haul the Saints had?
Weren't they always happy the day after the draft?
Right. Everything's
it's always a great draft
sunshine
class.
and roses right now.
I think that they really liked the defensive tackle they traded up for, and we've been trying to figure out how to pronounce his name. I think it's David Onyemata, so we might be wrong. Right. I think that they were afraid that, I think it's the Packers that was going to trade up and get him. Peyton shares an agent with that player, so I'm going to guess he got some inside information, and that was the reason for the trade. I think they love their wide receiver, but the problem is they didn't get a guard, and that's been a problem all offseason. And I really think it's because the Saints didn't have a lot of highly graded guards, and it just didn't work out to take one. Now, I sound like I'm defending them, but if you're in the 5th round and the only guards left are guards you've graded in the 7th round, you can't take one just to take one.
Right. I think they stayed true to their board, and they didn't reach for positions that they didn't feel like fit the area they were drafting at. And this, unlike last year where they kind of waited and didn't trade up in the 1st round in particular, and Andres Pete ended up kind of falling in their lap, and I don't think they were really necessarily happy with that pick. I think this year they were more aggressive. They went after guys that they were targeting, and I think got guys, especially at the top of this draft. I think they ended up with 3 of probably the top 30 players on their entire board. So I think they feel like they got maybe some more impact players this year than, say, last year, which was a good foundational draft. But you're right, they didn't get a guard. I think they probably would have liked to got a perimeter edge rusher and maybe even another corner, because we know they had interest in corners. But it just didn't happen for them this year. In that area of the draft, and I think they just took the best players available. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, first of all, the 2 guys that they did draft today. You mentioned Onyemata. He's a big kind of bruising nose tackle guy, and he's going to fit, I guess, next to Rankins on the defensive line, right?
He can either play in a 3-4 or a 4-3. I think he can play nose tackle. Peyton saw him maybe as an interior when they are in sub packages and as a defensive end in the base, which is kind of interesting because he's such a big guy. He's 300 pounds. But I was reading a CFL scouting report, and it was pretty glowing of him. He got a great grade. If he had gone in the CFL, he would have been a 1st rounder. And I know it's very different, but there's a lot of upside to this guy. The problem is he going to play this year? He's got to figure out how to transfer from Canadian football to American football, and he's still got a lot to learn. So he might be a guy that they're going to have to wait on long term, and it's just a problem if you need to improve your defense now, which they obviously need to do. As far as the other picks, I think Rankins is going to contribute right away. I think he'll immediately be part of that rotation, and I think that Thomas will probably figure in as well. He's going to be competing with Coleman, and it could be the guy to bump Coleman out if he doesn't have a great camp.
Yeah, and Onyemata is interesting in that he really didn't even start playing football until just 4 years ago. So not only is he coming from Canada, but he didn't even play football before he got to Canada. So I think we have to curb our enthusiasm for him a little bit. Obviously an intriguing prospect, but a guy that, even though Mickey Loomis said he expects him to contribute this year, I would imagine only in a situational role, maybe in sub packages like we said. Their 7th round pick, Daniel Lasco, is a running back out of California that looks like is actually graded. I saw the NFL Draft Scout had him a 4th round grade on him, but it's at a position where the Saints really don't have a glaring need, and it sounds like maybe it might be a special teams player.
I wondered that. I haven't had much time to study him just because it's been a little crazy with the undrafted free agents and everything, and Loomis was speaking. But that was a little bit of a head scratch. I guess once you get to the 7th round, it's so hit or miss. You could get a Marcus Colston, or you could just get someone who's not even going to make the team. So it makes me wonder what they think of Marcus Murphy, and if they're trying already, not to find a replacement for Murphy or Hightower, but maybe they just don't have them very highly valued. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think he was just the best player on the board at the time.
And that too. Maybe it's just the best guy on the board, and as you said, it definitely seemed like the Saints stayed true to their board this year, more so than ever.
And I think they probably feel confident that they can get some good players in this undrafted free agent class. They've done it in the past. You have to include that group in with the draft class. I think it's often overlooked, but last year, look how many of those guys made the roster. And my column, which will be, which I think will be posted probably within the next half hour, touches a little bit on a couple of forgotten players from last year's class. P.J. Williams, the cornerback from Florida State, Davis Toll, who is an edge rusher, and of course Andres Pete, the first-round draft pick. Those guys really didn't contribute much last year at all, and they're almost like extra draft picks this year. So I think you have to factor those guys also into the equation in this class coming up, because they're just like added benefits, I think, for this team.
Oh, I agree completely, and I think that if you're looking on NOLA.com right now, our list is running as they're signing people. Mickey Loomis said it's crazy in the room right now. Basically what happens is you have all the scouts and coaches, and they're on the phone, they're yelling, they want this player, they want that player, and you're just signing frantically, and it'll all shake out tomorrow. But I think that the Saints they signed the North Carolina guard, Landon Turner, and that's a very big pickup. He was projected to go as high as the 4th round, so maybe that's their drafted guard. I don't know.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. Obum Gwacham was a guy that ended up on the Seahawks last year. He was a draft pick, and he ends up now with the Saints. There's another guy that is a young sophomore kind of player that I think people can expect to see maybe more improvement in this offseason from him. And I think we can't overlook these undrafted guys. I remember a few years ago Sean Payton telling us how he had Arian Foster on the phone, running back out of Tennessee, and thought they were going to sign him in the undrafted class, and he ends up going to the Houston Texans and ends up leading the NFL in rushing in a couple of years later. So sometimes these guys are very talented players that could surpass even the draft picks that the Saints ended up drafting. So don't overlook some of these players that they bring in here in the next day or two.
Yeah, it's the fun part of the draft, or post-draft. I love to see who they get, and I think that fans really enjoy it too. So definitely look out for that on NOLA.com. We'll have a lot more updates tonight, and we'll kind of have a lot more information in the next few days.
Well, yeah, Catherine and I will be heading up to the Kentucky Derby in Louisville, Kentucky in the next 48 hours, but we will have lots of updates here at NOLA.com as always. So thanks for tuning in, and 2016 NFL Draft in the books here at Saints headquarters in Metairie.